Silence has a sound. Most people don't believe that. They think silence is an absence, a void. But they're wrong. On the morning of my 28th birthday, the silence in my small apartment on the southwest side of Denver sounded like the low, mournful hum of my old refrigerator. It sounded like the gentle, rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall, each tick a tiny, perfectly weighted hammer striking an anvil of expectation. Maybe this time. I woke up that day with a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. A dangerous, stupid, treacherous little thing called hope. It was a pathetic little flame in the vast darkness of my experience, but it was there. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe I'd wake up to a simple text. Happy birthday, son. Maybe even a missed call from my dad, gruff and awkward, but there. I made coffee, the cheap kind from the bulk bin. I sat on my worn-out couch, the one with the permanent impression of my body, and I stared at my phone. It sat on the cheap particle board coffee table, dark and silent. A black mirror reflecting my own foolish, waiting face. By 10 a.m., the hope had curdled into a familiar, sour resignation. By noon, it had been replaced by a quiet, empty ache in the center of my chest. The kind of ache that doesn't scream, but just sits there, heavy. And at 1:17 p.m., the silence was finally broken. My phone buzzed. Not a call. A notification from the family group. Chat. The one, ironically named, Family First, a die. My heart gave a stupid, involuntary leap. A conditioned response. Like Pavlov's dog, trained for years to salivate at the sound of a bell that rarely rang for him. Maybe a surprise. Maybe they were all messaging at once. I opened the message. It was from my mom. And I read it. Then I read it again. Then a third time, because my brain, my loyal, well-trained brain, simply refused to process the words on the screen. No one's coming to your party. Grow up. It wasn't a private message sent by mistake. It was a public broadcast. An execution. Beneath it, the reactions started to trickle in, each one a small digital twist of the knife. My Aunt Carol, the one who always called me her favorite hardworking nephew when she needed her lawn mowed for free, reacted with the emoji. My sister Emma, my golden child, finding herself sister, commented with a single cheerful Dotch. And my father, my own father, forwarded a meme. A picture of a sad-looking clown in a tiny party hat. The caption read, "Guess who's turning 12 again?" Now what I do her? I sat there in the dim gray light of my apartment. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to get louder and louder, until it was the only sound in the universe. Tick, tock, dot. A countdown. Not one person, not a single soul in that chat, asked how I was. Not one said, "Happy birthday." And the funniest part, the part that would change the entire trajectory of my life, is that I wasn't even hurt. Not in the way you'd think. The part of me that could be hurt by them, that tender, hopeful part, had been slowly, methodically carved out over years of tiny, precise cuts. It was scar tissue now. None died away. No, what I felt was clarity. A sudden, blinding, ice-cold clarity. It was like a man who's been walking through a thick, dense fog his whole life, believing the fog was the world. And then, in a single silent instant, a great wind changes, the fog vanishes, and he sees for the first time the sheer 1,000-foot cliff he's been standing on the edge of. They didn't just dislike me. They didn't just take me for granted. They despised me. They saw me as a caricature, a joke, a pathetic, predictable, eternally useful joke. The sad clown in the meme my father sent. A quiet final click went off deep inside my mind. It was the sound of a load-bearing wall turning to dust. My fingers, moving with a calm I hadn't felt in a decade, tapped out a reply in the group chat. A single word. Understood. And then I put the phone down on the table. I stood up, walked to my kitchen, and poured the bitter cold coffee down the drain. The gurgling sound was strangely final. The old Jacob, the Jacob who existed at 1:16 p.m. would have called. He would have pleaded. He would have apologized for a party he hadn't even planned. He would have swallowed the jagged pill of humiliation and asked what he did wrong. But the old Jacob, he died in that chair. Quietly. Without a funeral. The person who walked back to the living room was someone else entirely. Someone colder. Someone quieter. Someone who was about to audit the books. I picked up my phone again. And the very first thing I did, I opened my banking app. The screen glowed with a cool, impersonal blue light. I stared at the first scheduled payment in the list. $2,300. Recipient, Franklin Property Management. Date, 1st of every month. A payment I'd been making for 4 years. 48 times I'd made sure their home was secure before I even thought about my own. I remembered the conversation like it was yesterday. The 4 of us at their kitchen table. "It's just temporary, Jake," Mom had said, her hand on mine, her eyes full of practiced worry. "You're the only one who's stable right now. We gave you everything when you were growing up. Now it's just your turn to help for a bit." 4 years of a bit. My thumb found the cancel button. A small, innocent-looking button for such a monumental task. A pop-up appeared, a final checkpoint from a world that didn't understand. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" A dry, unfamiliar sound escaped my lips. It might have been a laugh. The sound of rust breaking. I pressed confirm, and in the silence of my lonely apartment, I heard the first chain snap. It was the loudest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I wasn't born for this. I wasn't born to be their pressure valve, their ever-present safety net. They built me for it, meticulously, piece by piece, year by year, crisis by crisis. It started so early, I barely recognized it as construction. I was 18, a month away from leaving for college. Not the state university everyone expected me to go to, but a small, prestigious private school 3 states away that had offered me a near-full scholarship for their engineering program. It was my dream, my ticket out. The acceptance letter was framed on my desk. One night, Dad sat me down. No preamble. Just, "We need to talk." He explained that his small contracting business had a bad year, that they'd taken out a second mortgage on the house years ago that he'd never told me about, that they were behind. "How much?" I asked, my own dreams starting to feel like sand slipping through my fingers. He told me the number. It was staggering. It was almost the exact amount I had saved from years of summer jobs and weekend shifts, money I needed for books, a new laptop, living expenses. "It's not your problem, son," he'd said, looking down at his hands. A classic move. The performance of not asking while asking for everything. My mom sealed the deal. "Your father's so proud. He'd never ask," she whispered later, catching me in the hallway. "But the stress, I worry it's going to kill him. If we lose this house, our home." I looked at my acceptance letter that night. The beautiful, crisp paper that represented my future. The next morning, I withdrew every penny from my savings account. I handed my dad a cashier's check. I ended up at the local state university. It was fine, but it wasn't the dream. "You're such a good son, Jacob," Mom had cried, hugging me. "Putting your family first." I wasn't putting them first. I was being placed last. I just didn't know the difference yet. That was the foundation, and they just kept building on it. Then there was my sister, Emma, the golden child, an expert at finding her way through my bank account. The SUV incident was a masterclass in their specific brand of psychological warfare. I was 26. I just paid off my own modest, reliable sedan. I was finally, for the first time in my adult life, debt-free. A feeling so light, so clean, it was intoxicating. It lasted for about a week. They sat me down for a family intervention. An intervention about me. "Jake, we're worried about Emma," Dad said gravely. "She needs a reliable car for her job interviews. I'm just so terrified she'll break down on the highway at night," Mom added, her hand fluttering to her chest. I, the fool, tried to be logical. She could get a simple used car, a Toyota Corolla, something reliable. Emma, on cue, burst into tears. A magnificent, theatrical performance. "You just don't get it," she wailed, her voice echoing with manufactured pain. "How am I supposed to look professional and successful pulling up to an interview in some 10-year-old rust bucket? You want me to fail? You've always been jealous of me." "Nadia." The accusation hung in the air, absurd and yet somehow effective. I tried to stand my ground. "I cannot afford a new car payment for you, Emma." "We're not asking you to," Mom said soothingly, sliding in with the checkmate move. "Just co-sign. Your credit is so good. It's just a signature. A formality. To show your support for your sister." It wasn't a formality. I paid the down payment. I paid the insurance. And for the next 2 years, I paid the monthly note more often than she did. The pressure, it was constant. A low-grade fever that never broke. They made sure of it. They'd test the boundaries, a little push here, a little guilt trip there, just to make sure the walls of their bank, were still standing. Last Thanksgiving, I drove 5 hours to surprise them. A fool's errand, I see now. I brought expensive wine, groceries, a pumpkin pie from the best bakery in town. I knocked on the door, my heart full of a stupid, hopeful warmth. Mom opened it and just blinked. "Oh, you came." Then she yelled over her shoulder, not even inviting me in. "Emma, tell Josh to hide the presents. Your brother's here." I stood in the doorway, my arms full of groceries, a cold premonition creeping up my spine. "Who's Josh?" She laughed, a brittle, tinkling sound. "Emma's boyfriend. They've been staying here for a bit. Don't worry, he's great." Josh, it turned out, was sleeping in my old room. The room with my high school trophies and engineering books still on the shelf. I slept on the couch. The one with the broken spring that dug into my back all night. That night at the dinner table, my dad, flushed from the wine I'd brought, made a toast. He raised his glass. "Let's hear it for the man who pays the bills," he started. And for a half-second I felt a warm surge of pride. He sees me. He finally sees me. "But can't hold down a girlfriend," he finished. The table erupted in laughter. It wasn't gentle teasing. It was sharp, cruel. Even Emma, especially Emma, laughed until tears streamed down her face. I didn't say a word. I just drank my wine. Then I helped clean the dishes. Then later that night I quietly paid the emergency plumbing bill online when the kitchen sink backed up from all the grease from the turkey I had bought. Because that's what the reliable son does. He swallows the joke, and then he pays the bill. The little humiliations kept coming, like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. The family trip to a cabin in the mountains I wasn't invited to. I found out when a coworker, a guy I barely knew, showed me a picture of my sister from the Instagram Explore page. "Hey, looks like a fun vacation," he'd said, oblivious. There they were. Mom, Dad, Emma, Josh. Smiling, wearing matching beanies. My mom was holding a mug that said, "World's Best Mom." A mug I had given her for her birthday 2 years ago. The missed rent payment. They didn't even have the courtesy to tell me. I just got a sharp, threatening email from the landlord. They just assumed I'd see it, that I'd fix it. And I did. Like always. But the absolute worst, the moment that should have woken me up, but didn't, was the wish list. I was working from home when the group chat started exploding. My dad had posted a screenshot of my private Amazon wish list. A list I'd made for myself, for my own birthday. Simple things. New socks because all mine had holes. A specific brand of shampoo for my dry scalp. A paperback book I wanted to read. His caption: "Look at this grown man asking for socks and shampoo for his birthday. Lol." My cousin Ashley, who I had helped move twice, replied, "Uncle Mark, I saw toilet paper on there too. Here you go, champ. How? Emma added, he probably expects us to gift wrap this too. I stared at the screen, and I realized they weren't just taking my money. They weren't just taking my time. They were taking my dignity. They were mocking my basic human needs, turning my quiet requests into a spectacle for their amusement. They had skinned me alive emotionally and were now laughing at my exposed nerves. And they assumed I would never fight back. And they were right. I didn't. Not yet. But I did start taking screenshots. I started forwarding emails to a private address. I started building a folder. A quiet, cold, meticulous archive. It was labeled receipts. It was the only thing I was building for myself. The morning after my birthday, the morning after I'd canceled the rent payment, I woke up and the silence was still there. No calls, no texts. The beast was sleeping. They hadn't noticed its food supply had been cut off. Of course they hadn't. Why would they? The first of the month was still days away. I put on a dark coat. I drove over to their house. The sun was bright. The air was cold and clean. I parked across the street. I could see my sister Emma through the living room window, laughing on the phone, a mug of coffee in her hand. Completely carefree, completely oblivious. It hardened the resolve in my heart to steal. I didn't go inside. I didn't knock. I stood on the sidewalk, pulled out the spare key fob for her SUV, the one I was still paying for, and pressed the button. The car chirped obediently, a loyal sound. I got in. The driver's seat still had her faint, cloying perfume scent. A half-eaten bag of expensive chips was on the passenger seat. I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and drove it straight to a dealership. I traded it in. The equity I had in it, the money I had paid, wasn't much, but it was just enough to cover the remaining balance on the loan. The loan that was in my name. The chain was broken. Then I sat in my own car in the dealership parking lot, the air smelling of new tires and financial freedom, and I called the bank. One by one, I shut them all down. The joint credit cards. The authorized user accounts. I wasn't offended anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was simply closing a business. A very, very bad investment that had finally gone bankrupt. The silence on their end lasted for 3 more blissful days. And then, the earthquake hit. It wasn't a tremor. It was a magnitude 9. It started with a single text from Emma. My gas card isn't working? Then another. A minute later. And my credit card just got declined for my morning coffee. WTF is going on? Then a call from my mother. Her voice, a thin wire of confusion and rising panic. Jacob, the landlord just called. He said you canceled the payment plan. Is that true? It must be some kind of mistake. You need to call them and fix it. No mistake, I said, my voice flat, calm, a placid lake over a churning volcano. What do you mean no mistake? She gasped. The rent is due tomorrow. We don't have it. What are we supposed to do? That sounds like a problem, I said. A problem? A problem? Jacob, this is our home, the home you grew up in. No, Mom, it's a rental property that you can no longer afford, and my name is no longer on the lease. I could hear her frantic, shallow breathing. I could picture her perfectly, clutching the phone, her knuckles white. You're just going to let us be evicted. Her voice trembled. I'm not going to do anything, I said, the words tasting like freedom. I'm just growing up like you told me to. I hung up before she could reply. And then the floodgates opened. The calls, the texts, the voicemails. A tidal wave of rage, disbelief, and magnificent, beautiful panic. They thought it was a tantrum, a bluff, a temporary malfunction in their ATM. They thought the good son, the reliable son, the sad clown from the meme would eventually come home. They didn't realize he was already home, in his own quiet apartment, and he wasn't ever leaving. Go me. The family meeting was their idea, of course. A final desperate attempt to regain control of their primary asset. It came a week later after the official eviction notice, bright and shameful, was posted on their front door. This time my dad called. His voice was different. No jokes, no condescension, just a low, dangerous rumble. The voice he used when one of his employees messed up. "Get over here, now. We are going to talk this out like a family." I almost said no. I almost hung up and blocked them all for good. But then I looked at the folder on my desktop, the one labeled Receipts, and I knew I had one final invoice to deliver. In person. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. I walked in without knocking. They were waiting in the living room, the air thick with the smell of stale anger and fresh desperation. Mom, Dad, Emma, and her ever-present boyfriend, Josh, the man sleeping in my old room, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "You've made your point, Jacob," my mom started, her voice trembling with a powerful cocktail of rage and self-pity. "You punished us. It was cruel. It was uncalled for. But you did it. Now it's time to stop this foolishness and fix it." Nah. Fix it. The two words that had been the story of my life. The two words that had cost me my dreams, my savings, my 20s. I didn't say anything. I walked to the center of the room, pulled my laptop out of my duffel bag, and placed it on the coffee table with a solid, definitive thud. "What's this?" Dad scoffed, gesturing at the laptop with a wave of his hand. "Brought your homework, big shot." I opened the laptop. And I opened the folder. The folder named Truth. It had a better ring to it than Receipts. "I believe you all know this story," I began, my voice calm and steady, like a narrator beginning a documentary. "It's about a family, and their son, the son who paid for everything. But today, we're going to add some visuals and audio enhancements." I clicked the first file. An audio clip filled the room. My mom's voice, from a voicemail she'd left 2 years ago when I was hesitant to pay for Emma's spring break trip. It was screeching, full of venom. "So tired of your attitude. It's time you grow up and pay your sister's tuition before she ends up bitter and alone. Just like you." My mom's face went chalk white. Dad stared at her, his mouth slightly open. I clicked the next file. Emma's voice, recorded from a speakerphone call with a friend that I had overheard by accident. "I know, right? He's always been weird, but it's easier this way. Just let him pay for things. It makes him feel useful. It's like his whole purpose, you know." Emma sank back into the couch, her face flushing a deep, ugly red. Josh slowly began to edge away from her. Then came the screenshots. An endless, scrolling waterfall of my life's ledger. Bank transfers. Overdue bills with my payment confirmations. The group chats. The wish list mockery. Emma's Instagram posts, bragging about trips I had unknowingly funded, hashtagged #bestlife and #independentwoman. I flipped the laptop screen to face them. They leaned in, their faces a mixture of horror and disbelief. Then they froze. I stood up, walked to their smart TV, a 65-inch screen I had bought them last Christmas, and plugged in a small USB drive. The screen lit up with a high-resolution image of a loan application. The new car for my dad last year. His name as the primary borrower. And my name as the cosigner, with a forged, clumsy imitation of my signature. I looked directly at my father. His face was ashen. His bravado had evaporated. "You used my social security number without my permission," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You committed a felony. You put me on the line for $60,000 of your debt because you wanted a nicer car than your neighbor." He opened his mouth, a sputtering, gurgling sound coming out. I held up a hand, silencing him. "It's already been reported to the credit agencies and the bank," I continued. "They have a zero-tolerance policy for fraud. You should be getting a letter and probably a phone call next week." My mom let out a small, strangled gasp. Emma, cornered and desperate, did the only thing she knew how to do. She laughed. A wild, hysterical, brittle sound. "Wow," she choked out, a smirk, twisting her lips. "You are so dramatic. What's next, big brother? You going to sue us?" I smiled. A cold, Thin, genuine smile. "No," I said. "But he is." That's when the doorbell rang. Punctual. Perfect. I walked over, opened it, and let him in. Jake Doe. Emma's ex-boyfriend. A quiet, decent guy whose life she'd almost ruined with a web of false accusations after Head tried to break up with her. He was holding a sleek, black, legal folder. Emma went white as a sheet. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Why are you here?" Jake didn't even look at her. He looked at my parents. He placed the folder on the coffee table. "You want to tell them," he said, his voice flat and dead. "Or should I?" He opened the folder. Inside, printed screenshots of the fake text messages she'd manufactured to frame him. A photo of her handwritten notes on how to emotionally manipulate and destabilize him. A full transcript of her voice memos, professionally analyzed to show the digital edits and splices. My mom started to sob, a raw, ugly, pathetic sound. Dad just stared at the wall, his jaw working silently, a broken man. Emma stood up, pointing a trembling finger. "You two are insane. This is harassment. You can't do this." Jake cut her off, his voice like ice. "You don't get to be the victim anymore, Emma. You're the villain in this story, and I'm done pretending you're not." He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. I followed him to the door. I paused on the threshold and turned back to face the wreckage of the family I once thought was mine. "You wanted me to play a role," I said to the silent room. The good son, the quiet wallet, the butt of the joke. I looked each of them in the eye. "But you made a mistake. You forgot to check who wrote the script." Then I took my laptop, my drive, my receipts, and I left their house and their lives for the very last time. Behind me, the shouting started. Mom screaming Emma's name. Dad demanding I come back and fix this. Emma throwing something that shattered against the wall. I didn't look back. Because when you finally detonate the truth, you don't turn around to watch the ashes fall. You just walk away and you let them burn. And I didn't just disappear. I upgraded, in every sense of the word. The business I'd been quietly building on the side for years, a small consulting firm for people who felt intimidated by technology. I poured my reclaimed time, my reclaimed money, and my reclaimed soul into it. I named it Understood Consulting. I launched a YouTube channel the same week. I posted one video. No fancy editing. No background music. Just me, sitting in my new empty apartment, speaking directly to the camera. The title was, When Helping Becomes Enabling, Drawing the Line. I didn't use their names. I didn't mention the specifics. I just talked about the quiet contracts in families, about the difference between support and sponsorship, about the crushing weight of obligation. And I ended with one line. You can love people and still walk away from what they do to you. Your peace is not negotiable. It got 400,000 views in 3 days. Then 1 million. Then 2. The comments section was a revelation. A global support group of silent sons and daughters. This is exactly what I went through. Thank you for putting it into words. My brother did the same thing to me for years. I finally cut him off last month. You're not alone. We see you. I got invited to speak on a podcast for adult children of narcissistic families. I said yes. Then a second podcast messaged me. Then a third. Then a publisher. I wasn't chasing clout. I was just speaking a truth so many people were starving to hear. My mother tried one last desperate time. She sent me a photo through a cousin. A letter from the mortgage company. The house, her parents' house, the one I had tried to save, was in foreclosure. Her message, relayed by the cousin, read, I hope you're proud of yourself. They're taking our home. I didn't answer. Instead, I replied to the cousin with a single screenshot, a summary page from my financial software, showing every dollar I'd sent them over the last 4 years. Over $84,000. My only caption was, you didn't lose a home. You lost a tenant. There's a difference. She left me on red. I moved quietly. No posts, no forwarding address. A downtown condo on the 10th floor, bought under an LLC. New view, new number, new life. I remember standing in the middle of my new living room the first night, barefoot on the cold, polished concrete floor, holding a mug of coffee. I realized, no one here is going to yell. No one's going to shame me. No one's going to ask for money or rides or just a little help this month. There would be no group chats, no fake birthdays, no memes shared behind my back. Just silence. Beautiful, earned, magnificent silence. 3 weeks after I moved, a single manila envelope arrived at my new P.O. box. A handwritten letter from Mom, forwarded by someone. Slanted, spidery cursive on floral stationery. You used to be our sweet boy. I don't know who this bitter man is. We made mistakes, but airing them like that. You humiliated us. You ruined us. Maybe one day you'll realize how hard it was for us. Maybe one day you'll grow up. It ended with, I'm praying for you. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just wrote 3 words on the back with a Sharpie. Keep your prayers. And I tossed it in the trash. I haven't spoken to my family in over a year now. I don't plan to. They still post sometimes, I hear. Cryptic messages about betrayal and rewriting history. I let them. You don't argue with ghosts. You just stop haunting yourself with their stories. And sometimes late at night I walk past the mirror in my hallway and I catch a glimpse of myself. Older, yes, but not bitter. Just unchained. Because I didn't escape a toxic family. I outgrew a cage they had built around me. And there's no coming back from that. Ever.